Some betrayals don't come with fireworks or screaming matches. They start in silence, in moments so subtle you almost talk yourself out of reacting. Almost. It was a Thursday night in Atlanta, sometime past 10. I had parked in front of our building and was unloading equipment from my car. Nothing important, just some demo kits I'd borrowed from work. Our apartment entrance had that yellow glow from the old sodium lamp, buzzing faintly like it always did, painting everything in this strange light that made even the familiar feel a little distorted. I remember I was crouched down, pulling a box out of the back seat, when I heard tires on gravel. Casey's silhouette appeared in the passenger seat of a dark sedan I didn't recognize. She stepped out laughing at something, waved back at the driver like they shared a secret, then turned toward me. The car pulled off fast. Too fast, like it didn't want to be seen or remembered. "Hey!" I said, trying to keep it casual, standing upright and brushing my hands on my jeans. "Late one. Business dinner," she said, already walking up the steps, heels clicking sharply against the pavement. It ran long. That was all she offered. No details. No client name. Just that. She looked good, too good, if I'm being honest. Hair done. Full face of makeup. That green satin dress she usually saved for weddings. And her perfume? It wasn't perfume. It was cologne. Sharp, musky. Definitely not mine. As she fished in her clutch for the keys, something fell. A folded receipt, glossy and stiff, landed face up on the concrete. I bent down and picked it up without thinking. A double room booked under initials at the redacted boutique hotel near Piedmont Park. Timestamp: 7:04 p.m. Check-in. Plus 2 breakfast vouchers stapled to the corner. My chest tightened, just a little, enough to notice. "What's this?" I asked, holding it out. My voice didn't sound angry. It just sounded tired. She glanced at it, then at me, and without missing a beat, said, "Oh yeah. They were doing some silly raffle thing at the dinner. Like a giveaway. I won it." She plucked the paper from my hand and stuffed it back into her bag like it meant nothing. "A double room and 2 breakfast vouchers?" I asked, still frozen at the bottom of the stairs. I tried to keep my tone even. I wasn't trying to accuse her. I was trying to make sense of what was clearly nonsensical. She rolled her eyes. "Nick, seriously?" I barely even looked at it. It was probably part of the package or whatever. Just a marketing thing. I stood there, quiet. Not because I believed her, but because I wasn't sure I didn't. That's how this stuff works. It's never one big lie. It's 1,000 small doubts, all dressed up in reasonable excuses. Then she stepped closer, leaned in to kiss my cheek. And that's when I smelled it again. Cologne. Strong. Masculine. Something expensive and definitely not something I owned. It was coming from her neck. My face must have changed because she pulled back slightly. "What now?" she said, like I was the one being difficult. "You smell like..." She laughed. "Oh my God," she said. "Seriously? Are we doing this right now?" I didn't respond. "It's probably from all the hugs," she said, waving it off like it was nothing. "Everyone was saying goodbye. You know how it is." I didn't. Not really. At my office, people shake hands. A few awkward side hugs, maybe, at someone's retirement party. But Casey worked in marketing. Maybe things were different in her world. Or maybe I just wanted to believe they were. Then came the pivot, the emotional redirection. "Honestly, Nick," she said, her voice lower now, more performative. "You've been weird lately, like watching me, picking apart everything I do. Starting to feel like you don't trust me at all." There it was. She had dropped the seed that the real issue wasn't her story, but my reaction to it. That I was overthinking, overreacting, paranoid. That I was the one creating drama where there was none. I didn't even realize I was apologizing until I heard myself say it. "No, you're right. Sorry. It's been a long week." She smiled, or something like it, and brushed past me to unlock the door. I followed her inside, but the space between us didn't close. If anything, it grew. She was already halfway up the stairs before I'd even taken off my shoes. Later that night, when she was in the shower, I walked past her purse sitting on the nightstand. I paused, stared at it. I didn't touch it. I didn't open it. But for the first time in our relationship, I wanted to. And that scared me more than anything. Because that's how it starts. Not with a fight. Not with a confession. But with a receipt dropped by accident and a hug that smells like someone else. With a smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. With a story that folds neatly under the weight of your own reluctance to confront it. I lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was wrong. That I had misread everything. That her story checked out even though it didn't. That the hotel receipt was a fluke. That the guy dropping her off was just a coworker. That I was tired, stressed, anxious, whatever excuse I could dig up to not deal with what I was starting to feel in my gut. But no matter how many times I turned the events over in my head, the details didn't add up. Not the receipt. Not the cologne. Not the tension in her jaw when I asked follow-up questions. Not the speed with which that car drove off. Not the new dress. Not the laugh that didn't sound real. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her walking toward me in slow motion, laughing about the raffle, waving off the questions like I was the one making a mess out of nothing. And maybe I was. Or maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of the unraveling. The thing about hindsight is it doesn't just come for the obvious stuff. It circles back with a spotlight and shines it on all the little moments you brushed off. And once it starts, it doesn't stop. It connects every dot you ignored, until there's nowhere left to hide from what's been staring you in the face. The morning after the hotel receipt, Casey acted like nothing happened. Eggs in the pan. French press brewing. She kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted almond milk or oat, and went on about some quarterly numbers meeting like we hadn't just stepped over something huge the night before. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. And worse, I couldn't stop noticing things. Started with her phone. She used to be careless with it. Left it on the kitchen counter, face up, notifications popping in like a slot machine. But lately, it was always face down. Always silenced. And when she picked it up, she'd tilt the screen away from me like she was guarding a secret. Sometimes she'd even walk into the hallway just to reply to a text. Subtle, but not nothing. Then there was location sharing. We'd both had it on, mostly for convenience. Traffic updates, grocery store check-ins, late-night Uber rides. But one morning, I opened Maps and noticed hers wasn't visible anymore. Location unavailable. Just like that. When I asked her about it, she said the app must have glitched. Promised to fix it. She never did. I didn't say anything at the time. I didn't want to seem controlling. But once you start cataloging red flags, it gets hard to stop. Friday nights used to be our thing. We'd do takeout, watch some indie horror flick I picked, or she'd make cocktails and play music while we argued over which Thai place was better, hers or mine. But lately, she was always out. Girls' night, she said. I need to decompress. Decompress. That word started to sound like code. The weird part was, she never posted anything from those nights, and neither did her friends. I check, not because I wanted to snoop, but because I was looking for reassurance. Something that said, hey, this is all in your head. But there was nothing. Not a photo. Not a tagged location. Just the occasional charge to the same downtown bar over and over. Different nights, same place. At one point, I asked her how the night went. She blinked twice before answering, like she needed a second to remember the story she was supposed to tell. Good, she said. We did karaoke. You would have hated it. Maybe. Or maybe she didn't want me there. Another thing, the gym bag. I found it in the back seat of her car when I went to grab her jacket one day. New, black, way nicer than the ratty one she used to take to yoga. Inside were men's pre-workout powders, a towel with the logo of a private fitness club, and a change of clothes I'd never seen before. Leggings and a sports bra I'm pretty sure were not on sale. I'm training with Jenna's friend, she told me when I asked. He's helping with my posture. Her posture? Casey had never once in her life cared about her posture. But again, I let it go. Because that's what you do when you're not ready to admit you might be standing on a fault line. She started buying perfume I didn't recognize. Not subtle ones either. Bold, expensive scents. Stuff you'd wear for a night out, not a desk job. She said it was just for work, but I never once smelled it when she came home after her supposed office days. Same with the dresses. Tight, sleek, minimal. The kind of thing someone notices. She said it was for client-facing meetings, but I worked in corporate too. No one's wearing heels like that to discuss email metrics. Then there were the emergency trips. 2 in the span of 3 months, both right before payday. Short notice. Last-minute bookings. Always some story about a team crisis or a new vendor. I remember asking her, "Don't they usually send your manager to those?" She just smiled. "I guess they trust me more." That line stayed with me, not because of what it said, but because of what it avoided saying. At some point, she stopped wearing her wedding ring, said it clashed with her outfits, that she didn't want to risk losing it at the gym, that her finger was swollen. It wasn't. I checked once, when she was asleep, the soft curve of her hand resting across her stomach. Her finger looked fine, normal, ring ready, but I didn't bring it up. Not right away, because what do you even say? "Hey, your excuses don't match the evidence? You sound like a crazy person, like someone who doesn't trust their own spouse." And that's a hard mirror to stand in front of. The moment that finally broke something inside me came late one night. We were both half asleep, her back to me. I was barely drifting off when I heard her mutter something. Soft, slurred, like it was part of a dream. "Dylan," she whispered. That was the name. Dylan. Not a family member. Not a friend. Not anyone I'd ever heard her mention in the 12 years I'd known her. I didn't react. Just lay there in the dark, eyes wide open, heart pounding. The next morning, I Googled the name along with her company. Nothing came up. No LinkedIn hits. No photo tags. But I couldn't shake it. Not just the name, but the way she said it. Like someone familiar. *mate. Like someone you dream about. That weekend, I watched her more closely. When she scrolled through her phone, she smiled at certain messages, a specific kind of smile. Not the funny meme smile. The "you make me feel seen" kind. The dangerous kind. I started timing things. Bathroom breaks. Phone calls outside. The way she'd leave her phone charging in a separate room. The way she suddenly started locking it. Something she never used to do. You start thinking in patterns. That's what happens. You start lining up receipts in your mind. You memorize timestamps. Mileage. Bank transactions. You tell yourself it's because you want to believe in them. Because if you're wrong, you'll feel like a monster. But the more I paid attention, the more I saw the mosaic come together. Not perfectly, but enough to know it wasn't all in my head. The weird absences. The half-truths. The changes. The distance. You don't go from texting your husband lunch selfies to flipping your phone upside down every time he walks in unless something has changed. You don't stop sharing locations unless you're going places you don't want seen. You don't forget your ring unless it's inconvenient for someone else to see it. None of these things alone would have been proof. But put together, it was a constellation, and every star pointed to something I wasn't supposed to know yet. There's a moment when suspicion stops being a theory and turns into a weight. It doesn't whisper anymore. It drops like a stone in your stomach and you don't want to, but you do. For me, that moment came on a Wednesday morning, a week after the hotel receipt. It wasn't a dramatic discovery. Not like the movies where a spouse bursts into a room and everything's laid bare. It was almost stupid how it happened. A software glitch, the kind of digital hiccup that usually just means restarting a device. Casey's smartwatch had been syncing to her phone for months. I never touched it. But for some reason that morning, our shared tablet pinged with an update, a run log from her watch. I opened it absent-mindedly, expecting to see one of her morning jogs. Instead, I saw a route map. Not around our neighborhood. Not near her office gym. Straight to the same boutique hotel near Piedmont Park. Same as the receipt. Same timestamp as one of her supposed client nights. There was no plausible explanation left. No raffle. No glitch. No girls' night. Just a straight line from our apartment to a hotel at 9:17 p.m. and a return path at 7:32 a.m. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling slightly. I wanted to close it, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. This was the map of my marriage breaking. By noon, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to wait for another receipt to fall out of her bag. I wasn't going to sit in the dark anymore, gnawing on questions like old bones. I needed to see it myself, to know once and for all without the filter of her excuses. That evening, she told me she had another late meeting. Her tone was breezy, rehearsed. She kissed me on the forehead, her lips cool. "Don't wait up," she said, already sliding into her car. She thought she was untouchable. I waited until she was a few blocks away, then grabbed my keys. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. It wasn't just anger. It was grief. It was adrenaline. It was the sick clarity that comes when the story you've been telling yourself dies mid-sentence. I drove the same route she had driven a week before. The night air in Atlanta was heavy, the kind that sticks to your skin. I parked a block from the hotel, under a dying streetlight. My palms left damp prints on the steering wheel. The hotel itself was one of those boutique places that pretend to be humble but aren't. String lights across a brick facade, a discreet valet stand, a lobby full of curated furniture meant to look like a living room. Discretion built into the walls. I waited. I didn't know what for. Maybe for her to appear, maybe for courage to solidify. Around 8:50, I saw her car turn the corner. She pulled into the lot, sleek and unhurried, like she belonged there. My stomach flipped as another car followed her in. A black SUV. A man got out, tall, broad shoulders, the kind of casual confidence you don't fake. He walked right to her. She smiled at him, that same smile I hadn't seen at home in months. And then she reached for his hand. Not a hug, not a shoulder squeeze, a deliberate, fingers-laced kind of handhold. The kind you don't do in public unless you've already decided you don't care who sees. They walked toward the entrance, his hand at the small of her back, her head tilted slightly toward his shoulder. It was an image that should have been int** mate, private. Instead, it was lit by the glow of a boutique hotel's awning and the headlights of my car. I didn't move. I didn't shout. I didn't storm out and demand an explanation. My whole body went cold. This wasn't a moment for confrontation. This was a moment for evidence, for clarity, for the quiet kind of truth you can't unsee. I raised my phone and snapped a photo through the windshield. My hands were steady now, like my body had already accepted what my mind was still fighting. One photo, then another, then one more as they disappeared into the lobby. I sat there for a long time after that, engine off, windows cracked. I could hear muffled laughter from the outdoor bar. The smell of night jasmine drifted in from somewhere. Atlanta felt different that night, like the whole city had tilted slightly, and I was the only one who noticed. Part of me wanted to follow them in, to ride the elevator, knock on the door, blow the whole thing open. But another part, the part that had been quietly gathering facts for weeks, told me to wait. Don't give her an opening to spin this. Don't hand her the narrative. Let the facts speak. Let her write her own confession with her actions. At dawn, I drove back. My clothes smelled like car upholstery and sweat. I felt like a ghost moving through my own apartment. Casey was already home, hair damp from a shower, wearing one of my old t-shirts like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted coffee. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't flinch. That's when I knew she thought she was still ahead of me, that she believed her stories still worked, that I was still the guy apologizing for noticing things. Later that morning, I pulled up the hotel's parking cameras. It wasn't hard. They stored a week's worth of footage for guest security. I'd set up the account for us years ago, when we stayed there for an anniversary weekend. Old habits, same login, and there it was, time-stamped, her car, his SUV, them walking out together at 6:48 a.m., her hair tied back, his jacket slung over his arm, both of them laughing. He reached out, touched her face. She didn't pull away. It wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't patterns or gut feelings or whispers in the dark. It was two people walking out of a hotel together after spending the night. It was her bare finger where a wedding ring used to be. It was his hand where mine had once been. Doubt ended there. It was undeniable. I saved the footage. **Ted the logs. Emailed everything to a private folder. I even printed a few stills because paper feels heavier than pixels, and I needed to feel the weight of it in my hands. I didn't confront her that day. I didn't say a word. I smiled when she texted me a heart emoji from the office. I smiled when she said she was excited for girls' night on Friday. I smiled because for the first time in weeks I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew. And now she just didn't know that I knew. There's a strange calm that comes after certainty. It's not peace. Not yet. It's more like standing in the eye of a storm. You've seen the damage, you know the winds are still circling. But for a moment everything feels still. Clear. Sharp. That's where I was after the hotel. I had proof now. Not rumors, not half-glimpses, not late-night paranoia. Proof. And once you have proof, the whole game changes. You're not trying to figure out what's real anymore. You're deciding what to do with it. I didn't explode. I didn't throw her things on the lawn. I didn't even confront her. I started planning. Quietly. Methodically. The first step was digital. We had built our whole life around shared accounts, phone plans, Wi-Fi, streaming subscriptions, cloud storage, joint calendars, recovery emails. Little invisible strings binding us together. I started cutting them one by one. I logged into our cell plan and canceled her secondary line. No alert, no message, just a silent removal. She'd find out when the signal dropped. Next was the home Wi-Fi. I changed the password, rerouted the admin email to my private account, and removed her devices from the access list. Netflix, Spotify, Amazon Prime, gone. She'd open the app and find herself logged out. No explanation. Bank records were next. I downloaded every statement, every hotel bill, every suspicious charge, and saved them in a folder labeled renovation plans on my work laptop. Backed up twice, one copy on a drive in my desk at the office. I changed my direct deposit to a new account she didn't know about. Closed the old joint card. Requested a new one in my name. It wasn't about revenge. It was about building a firebreak, clearing space so when the flames hit, they wouldn't take everything with them. Meanwhile, at home, I gave her nothing to react to. No accusations. No cold shoulders. I smiled. I washed the dishes. I asked about her day. I let her believe the narrative she'd built. Nick, the distracted husband, too soft to notice. But inside I was a chessboard. Every move was premeditated. I started documenting. **TS of Slack chats she left open by mistake. Her hotel routes synced from the watch. Texts with Dylan that popped up as notifications before she silenced them. Timestamps of her so-called work nights lined up next to the boutique hotel's receipts. I didn't need a PI. I was my own. The hardest part wasn't the logistics. It was the discipline. Sitting across from her at breakfast, knowing exactly where she'd been the night before, and acting like I didn't. Listening to her complain about a client call when I had footage of her laughing in the hotel parking lot at dawn. Watching her lean in for a kiss on autopilot and smelling his cologne on her hair. It burned. But I let it burn. Because that burn was fuel. The turning point came at a corporate event. We'd both been invited, her company partnering with mine on a local fundraiser. Normally she'd go alone, but this time she asked if I wanted to join. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she wanted to keep me on display, the faithful husband prop. We arrived at the hotel ballroom together. She was in another new dress, navy blue, slit higher than she used to wear. Her hand on my arm felt like a costume. Halfway through the night, she tried to lean closer, whisper something in my ear the way she used to when we were still us. "You look good tonight," she murmured, confident. Like she still held the script and I'd follow my cue. But I didn't. I stepped away. Not rudely. Just enough that her hand fell from my arm. Her smile faltered for a second, confusion flickering across her face. She wasn't used to that boundary. She was used to me bending, absorbing, apologizing for noticing. That small step back was louder than any confrontation. It was the first time she saw, even if she didn't understand, that something had shifted. I stayed polite for the rest of the night. Talked to colleagues, shook hands, laughed at jokes, but I didn't orbit her. I didn't fill her wine glass. I didn't make excuses. I let her drift. By the end of the evening, she was watching me from across the room, eyes narrowing slightly, like she was trying to read a language she used to know but had forgotten. That was the moment I realized control had started to tilt. Back home, she asked if everything was okay. Her tone was casual, but her fingers fidgeted with her necklace. "You seemed a little off tonight," she said. "I'm fine," I told her. And I was. Not happy, not healed. But fine in the way a diver feels fine once his feet touch the bottom, solid ground at last. In the days that followed, I kept withdrawing. Not dramatically, not with accusations. Just small, irreversible shifts. I stopped volunteering information about my day. I stopped answering her texts immediately. I changed the passwords on my personal accounts. I rerouted the mail to a P.O. box she didn't know existed. She noticed. I could tell. The question started, "Did you change the Wi-Fi? My phone's not working. Did something happen with the plan? Why can't I log into Netflix?" I shrugged. Must be a glitch. The same word she'd used about location sharing. Every small cut was a signal. Not to punish her, but to make space for myself. To build a boundary so cold and so clear that when the time came, there would be nothing left for her to lean on. I even started rehearsing conversations in my head. Not fights, but exits. Calm, factual, like reading minutes from a meeting. No raised voice. No begging. Just a line drawn. The more I prepared, the less power her lies had. I wasn't clawing for her version of the truth anymore. I had my own. I started working out again. Joined a cooking class. Reached out to friends I hadn't seen in years. Not because I was moving on yet, but because I needed to remember who I was before suspicion became my full-time job. At night, when she slipped into bed after another late meeting, I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, my mind running through the checklist. Phone line, bank account, Wi-Fi, documents, exit plan. Not rage, not despair. Just quiet steps out of the house she didn't know was already emptying of me. She still hadn't said Dylan's name again. But she didn't have to. Every move she made spelled it out. And every move I made spelled something else. The beginning of the end. There's a difference between revenge and consequence. Revenge is loud, messy. It wants to be seen, wants to burn everything in sight. Consequence is quieter. It doesn't announce itself. It simply waits for the truth to arrive. And when it does, it changes the locks behind you. That's what I was after, consequence, not revenge. I wasn't going to scream at her in a parking lot or send hotel photos to family members. That wasn't me. But I also wasn't going to let her walk through the world untouched, like nothing had happened, because something had, and there needed to be a record of it. So while she kept lying to my face, I turned my focus to the one place she never thought I'd look, her job. Casey worked at a mid-sized marketing firm, flashy enough to have a rooftop bar, small enough that people still whispered when someone got called into HR. She liked to call herself indispensable. Said the company wouldn't function without her. That's where I started. I wasn't sure what I'd find at first. I didn't want to make assumptions. But the deeper I looked, the more I realized she hadn't just betrayed me. She'd tangled her entire career into the lie. It started with her Slack messages. One night, while she showered, I opened her work laptop. She'd left herself logged in, and curiosity tipped into confirmation fast. There, between client pings and project updates, were strings of chats with someone listed as DJ. I knew who it was before I clicked. "Late night again?" He'd written on a Friday. "Don't forget to bring the wine this time." She'd replied with a winking emoji and, "Already packed. You bring the playlist." Later, I found a message dated from the night. She told me she was stuck in traffic. "Room's ready. You owe me for checking in. Next time you're doing the front desk gymnastics." They weren't even being subtle. Mixed in were references to work projects, files shared from her company's drive, client decks being passed back and forth alongside emojis and private jokes. She was using work systems for personal coordination, using company hours for hotel rendezvous. That mattered. I started taking *TS timestamps, user tags, file trails. I cross-referenced calendar invites with the nights she was working late. It lined up almost too cleanly. They were using after-hours campaigns as cover for entire weekends together. Then I checked the network logs. A friend of mine in IT walked me through it. We pulled metadata from her VPN login history. Dozens of sessions pinging from hotel Wi-Fi addresses instead of the office or home. She'd been remoting into work while physically checked into boutique hotels across town. I found an expense report she submitted the month before. It included client dinner at a steakhouse that matched the timestamp on a photo I had of her and Dylan walking out of the same place. She used her company card. I froze when I saw it. That wasn't just infidelity. That was fraud. So I compiled it. A folder of *TS, messages, Wi-Fi logs, booking receipts, and a note at the end that said simply, "This activity may constitute misuse of company resources and falsification of expense reports. Discretion is requested, but so is accountability." I sent it anonymously. I didn't expect anything right away. Corporate systems are slow to move, especially on people like Casey, the charming ones, the ones with smiles that feel like currency. But when the fallout came, it came all at once. The following Monday, I knew something was wrong before she even stepped through the door. Her messages that morning were clipped. Short replies, no emojis. Her "running a little late" text came 2 hours after she usually started work. I was in the kitchen making coffee when the door finally opened. She walked in stiff, like her bones didn't quite trust her skin anymore. "They're doing a systems audit," she said, tossing her purse on the counter. "Something about security logs and device access. It's probably nothing." I nodded. Probably. She was pacing more that week, tapping her nails on the table when she worked from home, rechecking her phone, snapping a little too fast when I asked if she wanted takeout. By Thursday, I knew it was unraveling. Her keycard stopped working. She texted me from the lobby, saying she forgot something. I offered to drive it over. She didn't respond. That night, she came home early, said they were restructuring some teams. I asked if that meant layoffs. She didn't answer. Then Friday morning, it happened. I got a text at 9:04 a.m. from a friend who worked in the same building. "Security just walked your wife out. Not HR. Not a scheduled exit. Security. That only happens when things go bad." Quietly, but officially. She didn't come home until after dark. Her voice was hollow when she walked in. "They're saying I violated some policies. Said there were logs showing non-compliant behavior." She laughed once, bitter. "I told them it was all personal, that nothing got out." She wouldn't look at me. I wanted to ask her what she thought would happen. If she thought no one was paying attention. If she really believed her hotel nights and steakhouse bills would go unnoticed. But I didn't. I just asked, "Was Dylan worth it?" She stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. "Don't call him that," she said. That told me everything. They weren't just coworkers. They weren't just mistakes. She had a name for him. A version of him that she'd protected, even now, after it had cost her everything. She lost her job. Not because she cheated. Because she gambled with liability. The company didn't care about our marriage. But they cared about risk. About expense reports. About IP leaving the server through a boutique hotel's network. They didn't fire her for morality. They fired her for exposure. And somehow that made it worse. Because she didn't fall from grace. She slipped. Slowly. One line crossed at a time. Just one night turning into 10. We're just talking evolving into hotel bookings and fake meetings and corporate cards used like credit in a secret life. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just watched the unraveling. And somewhere deep down, I wondered how long she'd been standing on borrowed ground before it finally gave way. I drove to her father's house and laid everything out, hotel receipts, chat logs, the audit trail. No anger, just facts. The man who once saw me as too cautious now sat speechless, his golden child exposed. He didn't defend her, didn't say a word. That silence followed her home. For the first time, even her strongest defender looked at her differently, and she knew it. She tried to fix it. Cooked breakfast, wore old hoodies, played our songs. But I was already gone. Divorce filed. Accounts closed. Lease ended. I signed a new one across town. In that small apartment, I started over. No more checking receipts or reading silences. Just air. Stillness. Freedom. Not from her, but from the version of myself who stayed too long waiting for a lie to sound like love.